Yo, what's good everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. And on today's show we're taking a look at GunNail, developed and published by NMK for the arcade in 1993. This vertical shoot 'em up recently got a re-release via the arcade archives on the Nintendo Switch by Hamster, and I've gotta admit they've been kinda crushing it with the sheer volume of titles I've never heard of that quickly become favorites. It's a fairly standard but fun shooter with a couple nuances. I would cue the segue about the story, but the thing is, I couldn't begin to tell you what the story of GunNail is since there is no context whatsoever. What I can tell you though is that it's a really fun shoot 'em up and is worth checking out on the Switch. Gameplay wise, you've got a pretty basic shoot 'em up in regards to that you have your shot, bombs, and various weapon pickups like the tracer rounds, Vulcan shot, and the purple laser beam. And with those upgrades, you've also got options to double your firepower. But where GunNail differs from other shoot 'em ups is with its triple shield system. This allows your craft to take 4 hits before exploding and losing a life, and during stages, the lower your health is, the higher your bonus will be. So if you want to go with a more high risk, high reward style gameplay, just knock your shields down all the way before the boss fights or throughout the level and cash out on those sweet bonus points. Playing this way also gets you to extend bonuses quicker, which adds an additional shield, allowing up to 6 hits before exploding. Throughout the game's 8 stages, it basically throws you into the thick of it and lets you figure out how everything works. And the enemies start off simple enough and in smaller numbers, though by the latter stages you'll be dodging and blasting everything that moves with larger, spongier enemies and at times numerous and quick bullet patterns. 2 of the 8 stages are bonus rounds where your goal is to fell as many majors as possible so that they'll drop speed power-ups, allowing you to get to the finish lines faster, which has crafts that drop tons of bonus points and weapon icons. This is similar to the bonus stages in Aero Fighters 2 and 3, except the catch is everything is shooting back at you, and mini bosses are also on the board towards the end as well. Each boss fight is pretty interesting and will challenge most players trying to either not get hit or get hit just enough to rack up those bonuses I mentioned earlier, so you've got options on how you want to go about the combat scenarios. It's interesting that you're somewhat encouraged to go into encounters with one shield to maximize score, but if you get shot down, you'll also lose that bonus since you'll have full health when you continue. It's also worth noting that bombs, while flashy looking, don't seem to do much damage even with direct impact drops. However, bombs do work pretty well for defense and getting bullets off screen if you're getting overwhelmed, so they aren't for nothing after all. Graphics wise, GunNail looks pretty good with its mechanical sprites and solid animations. Even when the screen gets hectic, it doesn't slow down too much, but it does chug some on the Switch version at times when there's a lot going on. The color palette does have a slight washed out look to it, but it's not to say that it necessarily looks bad by any stretch. Enemy sprites and environments do have a lot of detail, and the bosses are large mechanical beasts that look pretty good even with its slightly overexposed look. Stages are again fairly standard to shoot 'em up locales, and you'll get the gamut of sights you'd expect to see, like cityscapes, outer space, and the inner workings of the enemy hideouts, all with great detail. Enemy variety is also pretty decent, even though some of the enemies do repeat in stages, though even the smaller enemies have a solid amount of detail. Enemy animations too are also really good here with the bosses, and those are some of the better bits visually. A few enemies here also have this sick blue tracer effect that looks pretty tight, so for being a somewhat mixed bag, it's mostly good stuff in here visually. Explosions and gunfire also look pretty tight, and you can upgrade each of the 3 weapons several times, and they get more pronounced with each weapon upgrade. Granted, you can keep them without being hit. The Megaton Blast at the end of each boss fight also drops an orange tinge over the screen, displaying the bonus you achieved, while also having that old school motif to it. So for everything that goes boom in GunNail, it all looks pretty sick. Sound-wise is where GunNail is at its strongest, with some nice punchy sound effects, backed up with a hype soundtrack as you blast your way through the mechanical foes. The audio here is pretty solid, and the sounds of each impact when losing a shield stock or shooting down enemies is pretty crunchy front to back. The whip crack of the bomb drop also sounds pretty sick here too. The soundtrack though bangs from start to finish with heavy slap bass riffs from the opening tune, and the in-game music stands out with some really fun high energy tracks that carry the action through each stage. There's a few unique boss tracks here too, and they're mainly smoke, especially that final boss tune. The track used for the game's ending sequence is also pretty dope as you fly back to the carrier and triumphantly exit your craft to an ovation from your crewmates. The instrumentation here is very well done, and definitely a strong suit throughout the run of GunNail. GunNail is a fun, uncommon shoot 'em up that is a good one to play through since outside of the arcade release has never been on console up until somewhat recently. Developer NMK has some really good titles under their belt, and they all do something a little bit different than the rest, and this follows suit with their shooters and their platformers. While this doesn't do too much that's exactly groundbreaking aside from the scoring system, it doesn't really do much that's wrong either, so it's right in the middle. It's a quick and fun title to run through and get familiar with, and for $8, it's worth a look for sure. GunNail gets a 7.5 out of 10 and comes recommended to shoot 'em up fans looking for something a little bit different yet somehow familiar at the same time. The unconventional scoring system is an interesting take for the genre, and the high risk, high reward aspect can certainly fuel some repeated plays. NMK also released the Thunder Dragon series with its second entry releasing in the same year as GunNail, and we'll check those out soon enough too. It's really cool to see these games getting showcased outside of the arcade, and this one's a decent shoot 'em up to add to any digital collection. And I thank you again if you made it this far in the video. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you can use this as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and commentaries coming up in the near future. But until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.